and Soul with Annette. We're your hosts, Annette. Analyze intriguing life questions and concerns, such as, do Christians suffer from mental illness? Have you wondered why they act abnormal? Or you may ask, what is really going on in their minds? Do you need a net? Well, keep listening for a biblical understanding of the psychology of the mind.
Hey, great afternoon and welcome to another wonderful session of Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. And I am your host, Annette Harris. Thank you so much for joining us on today, for watching and or listening. Now, of course, before I get started, I always like to acknowledge the Lord in prayer. Lord, we thank you for this beautiful day that you've blessed us to see. We thank you for all that you are and who you are in our lives. And we pray glory out of this session and whatever we go to say and do. In Jesus' name we pray. And our opening scripture that I normally like to quote that this show is based off of is Hosea 4:6. The first part states, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee." And again, we're grateful to be here. It is another Wednesday. Many of you may call it hump day. It's the middle of the week. We're excited to be here. And we come every Wednesday from 12 to 2 to give you great shows, to highlight individuals that are very important to us and their projects and all. So we just want to share them with you. So I am excited as usual. We had a little technical difficulty starting out, but just want to let you know there are two different ways right now you can listen to us. You can go to YouTube. Hopefully you are there and you can type in Intellectual Radio and you will see Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette live at the present time. And then also you can go to our station's website, IntellectualRadio.com, all one word, IntellectualRadio.com. And there you can listen to us. Now, once Facebook does its thing, maybe we can come back up on it during the time that we are on today. So I am just willing and ready to present to you who I have on today. I'm excited because two individuals are here with me that I have known for quite a while. One who will be co-hosting with me on today. I think I've known her all my life. Kind of think I have. I'm introducing to some and presenting to others my wonderful, beautiful sister, Gwendolyn Gaston Gray, and she is to my far right. How are you on this afternoon?
I'm wonderful, sister. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful.
Awesome.
Now, do me a favor, make that mic your friend.
Okay.
All right.
My friend.
All right. Make it your friend. Yes, that sounds great. Sounds great. I have bios here. I have everything I had asked you all to send to me. But I'm going to let you all talk about yourselves today. But before we do that, how about we introduce a wonderful young man I have been impressed with. And I'm so grateful that he has consented to join us on this afternoon. You're looking at and probably listening to also once he speaks, Mr. Lamone Lampley. He is new author of his book entitled 7 Foot Faith. And if you kind of see him stand up, you probably understand why he titled it that way. But he is here this afternoon. He is a former DePaul University basketball great, NBA player as well. And I am so glad that you are here on this afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, and I'm glad to be here, excited. Ironically, I am sitting in front of two women who actually also started at DePaul.
Yes.
Two former cheerleaders from DePaul. So we have two former cheerleaders and a basketball player.
There you go. There you go.
Excited about being here on this afternoon.
Oh, great. I'm so glad you're here. When I saw a post about your latest project, I messaged my sister. I said, please get him for me. I want him on my show because the title alone caught me.
Okay.
And so I wanted my listeners to be able to hear about your journey, your project, and to hear about Lamone. So here we are today.
Okay.
Here we are. And I'm going to ask you to make that mic your friend as well. You kind of move up a little bit closer to it. That'll be great. So I want them to hear. I don't want them to miss anything. on today.
All right, I think we got it now.
All right, all right. How about we do this? How about we start out? Gwen, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, or tell my listeners, I know about you. Tell my listeners a little bit about you, and maybe that you want them to know and to share with us on today.
Okay, well, I'm her sister. I'm actually her older sister.
Here we go.
I'm not a medium sister. We do have an older sister, but I'm still older than Bridget. But she was always the baby girl, always the brat. So if you hear me refer to her during this broadcast as Brat or Bridget, please forgive me. That is the same as Annette. I'm Gwen Gaston Gray, and as Lamone stated before, I attended DePaul University, and he was one of the first people I met at DePaul. I was an incoming freshman. He was a sophomore. I tried out for the cheerleading team, and I had the wonderful privilege of cheering for him and so many other DePaul greats. Wonderful school, wonderful group of men. I know, honestly, that this program is not about me, but the reason, one of the reasons Lamone and I are still in contact with each other is because at the time I entered DePaul University, I had just lost my only brother, Daryl Gaston, actually just about a month and a half before I was to leave. As a matter of fact, I was not slated to go to DePaul University. I was on my way to Tuskegee Institute, excuse me. But it was such a tragic event, and I had applied to DePaul and had been accepted. I wanted to stay home at that time, and it set the wheels in motion. And I want to say that the moment I stepped on campus, there was a band of brothers that was concerned about me, about my well-being, about the fact that I had just lost my only brother. They took me under their wing, and Lamone Lampley was one of them. And I thank God for him. I thank God for him being at DePaul at the time. We had Tyrone Corbin, we had Kenny Patterson, Dallas Comegys, who was his roommate.
Yep.
We had Marty Embry, Kevin Holmes, Tony Jackson. And they were just absolutely wonderful to me. I don't know if they know today how much they helped me along, in my grieving process and adopting, my new big brothers. But I do want to say thank you. And I thank God for you. I really, really do. In addition to that, at the time, and he'll get into that, I'm sure, a little bit more later, he had a wonderful girlfriend at the time who is now his lovely wife. And I cannot say enough about Angela Houston Lampley, because she even took me under her wing. And I'm talking about a sister who was just concerned. Even when we went to away games, certain things I didn't have, and I don't mind telling you. I mean, things such as coats or earrings or whatever. Angie would just give it to me, say, here, wear this. Just give it back when you come back from wherever we were going, whether it was UCLA or Louisville or whatever. And that's just the kind heart that Angela always had. So she was my big sister. He was my big brother. They still are today, and I certainly thank God for them. So that's kind of my story, at least my connection to Lamone. I am a professional voiceover artist. I actually also host my own local cable TV show called Let's Talk. So we're in the business together, my sister and I, and there's a history behind it, a familial history that I won't get into, but I'm grateful to be here.
Oh, great. Wow. That was a lot, wasn't it?
It was.
But it was beautiful. Thank you. Appreciate that. And you know what? I'm glad that she consented to come today as well, because when we were putting this together, I said, well, she was like, I'm coming. She told me she was coming. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to make you my co-host for the day then.
Glad she's here.
But yeah, she has great connection. And I'm glad she actually brought up when she first, went to campus at DePaul and talked about you all taking her in and being there for her. So you not only took her in, you took me, you took me in, and the rest of the family as well, and she always tells people that I tagged along, that I followed her to DePaul.
Yes, she did. She did everything I did. She followed me to DePaul.
So I don't mind saying, yeah, I did. But that's okay though, because I got a chance to meet, all of you guys and become acquainted with you. And it was such a pleasure. I don't mind saying this. When we came in and I said, let me get my hug. And then I hugged him. I said, oh, yeah, I remember these tall hugs. I had to reach up for you. But that was how, not only him, but the other guys, too. They were just so tall. It was like, oh, gosh. But anyway, yeah, they are my brothers. And so I just really appreciate that. So thank you for that, Gwendolyn. And so, Mr. Lampley, can you introduce yourself to my listeners as well on today?
Yes, as they mentioned, I am Lamone Lampley, born and raised on the south side of Chicago. Attended Chicago Vocational High School, After 4 years there, was offered a college scholarship to play basketball at DePaul, and was there 4 years. Thankfully, was able to um, get my degree, and still had an opportunity to play professionally. Second round NBA draft pick by Seattle Supersonics, and then I played about 8 years professionally in Europe, Italy, Spain, and Greece. And like you said, it was a camaraderie among us as student athletes and cheerleaders and basketball players. So really developed a great relationship with Gwen and Bridget, known as Annette. She wanted me to make sure. We talked earlier. She wanted to make sure that her professional name is Annette, or that's what she's known to her listeners. But
Exactly.
I'm glad and excited to be here. Playing sports allowed me to meet a lot of nice, interesting people. Gave me an opportunity to do something that I enjoy doing. And so I'm grateful to be here on today. Thankful for the opportunity to be here. And it's like a homecoming of sorts to be back in you all's midst. So I'm thankful to be here.
All right. Well, great, great, great. That was a quick summary of yourself, being very modest over there, but that's all right. Now, yeah, I guess that's how you kind of get by a little bit there, being modest, right?
Yep.
Let somebody else toot your horn.
That's
Is
right.
that it?
That's right. That's right.
That's what we're about to do.
Yeah, and that is what we're about to do. If you see, I'm almost kind of embarrassed to show this, but not really. You see my notes, my post-it notes. I've been all in this book, and I have been highlighting different things here, and it intrigues me. I was speaking with someone probably maybe a few months ago, and I was talking about my show with them, and I mentioned about the individuals that I normally have on my show. And I said, a lot of times I'm highlighting individuals. They may have projects, they may be artists, with songs, authors, of course. And then we kind of got stuck talking about authors. And I told them, I said, the thing with me is for you to grab my attention with a book, for me to even have you on my show, or for me to even read it. I told them, I said, the foreword is what grabs me. And they said, that's interesting because that's not written by the author. My point exactly.
Okay.
Because to me, that tells me, okay, because the foreword is normally, of course, written by someone other than the author. And it tells me what they think about you, what they think about your project. And it's actually they're introducing me to your project, your book, and telling me this is why you should read this. And for it to come from someone else, I think that's very important. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I was looking at your foreword by Mr. Kellogg here, and it was it was to the point. Some of the points he brought up were very important, and I kind of want to start there. I'm not sure, Gwen, if anything caught your attention in that forward like it did with me, but one thing that caught my attention. Let me read this. Um, Towards the end, he says, "I've developed." Oh, sorry. Although we only recently became acquainted via a live social media podcast, I have developed a brotherhood with this new author. That spoke volumes to me. It wasn't as if he knew you when when you were growing up, when you were a little kid or whatever. He pretty much, had just become acquainted with you, and at the time of this writing, I'm sure.
Sure.
And so it spoke volumes because he was able to say so much in just those two little pages. How did you even come about to even ask Mr. Kellogg to write your forward for you?
Well, as was mentioned, I was invited to participate on a social media event, and basically the events was basically centered around former uh, basketball players who have a background with Christianity, and what are they doing now, and how has basketball and their religion impacted their lives. So I was on this panel, and Clark Kellogg was actually the moderator for this particular event. And we had a chance to interact with him, each individual. He asked different questions about us growing up and things of that nature. And so later on, I found out that we shared some commonalities. Those included us having 3 children, both being able to play professionally, both having being grounded and having a background serving God. So from that point on, I just really grabbed, it was a good opportunity for me to meet someone who, like I said, whose life parallels similar situations to mine. And I gave him actually a compliment on the show, even though he was interviewing us. I told him that, when I was growing up, we grew up with people like Dick Enberg, Al McGuire, Billy Packer. So to see an individual who's now on TV now as a sportscaster, as a African American, and very well considered in what he does, and so it was just a blessing to see someone. I mean, like I said, Billy Packer, they did great jobs, but when I was growing up, you never actually saw an individual who played the sport and then actually was able to be on TV and talk so articulately as Clark Kellogg does, specifically during right around this time now, which is considered March Madness. So the basketball tournament will start up, but just a very, very eloquent speaker. And I just have a lot of love and respect for him. And he agreed to, write the foreword for this book. So I was definitely very impressed and very appreciative of him writing the article.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, he did a great job.
He did a wonderful job. And, I want to also point out, to kind of piggybacking, Lamone, off of what you said. Yes, Clark Kellogg was an NBA player. He originated from Ohio State. So they've got the Midwest in common, of course, and having played professionally. But then not only that, being intellectual young Black men. And, Clark is not doing what he's doing necessarily because it was given to him. Yes, he was an NBA player, but to have that knowledge, to be able, like you said, to articulate that as a sports analyst. And even you. I mean, Lamone and I had a conversation a couple days ago about the book. And I told him, I said, you know what? I couldn't put the book down. It is absolutely positively refreshing. I absolutely love his candor, and I absolutely love the way that the book flows. Not everyone can do that. And you have to have the smarts or the knowledge base to do that in the first place. So I do want to say that my band of brothers at DePaul University, they were all intelligent. Every single one of them. They were not just student athletes. We're talking about some smart young men. Just wanted to throw that in there.
Wow.
Appreciate that. Appreciate it.
That's good stuff right there. But yeah, it blesses us to see our brothers, succeeding in what they're doing. It really does. And you said something when we were talking on the phone the other day. And maybe I'll just ask this question now. Your reason for writing this book, because you said you wanted people to see, about basketball players, that they don't just have that one focus, eat, sleep, drink basketball or whatever. There's something else to them, outside of them. Do you want to expound on that?
Sure. A couple things inspired me to write the book. I was actually back at my alma mater working in athletic development. And so I started to take classes working toward my master's degree at DePaul. And so as I was turning in my homework and research and things of that nature, a couple of my professors, they really, enjoyed my work and the work that I turned in. And they said, well, when are you going to write a book? And so from that point on, I started considering maybe at some point I was going to write a book, but really just didn't have the time to do it. But as time went on and life experiences happened, I started journaling and I started writing stuff down. And as I started writing, I started getting more into it, and I started to remember just so vividly things that had happened in my childhood as a young man growing up on the south side of Chicago, specifically, matriculating from the south side to the north side, going to DePaul. And I just started to write things. And you've always hear about people saying that when you write, it can be very cathartic. And for me, that became a true point, because I found myself a lot of times just being in situations as I was typing away on my iMac at home, and things just came back so vividly. Sometimes I actually started tearing up because I can just remember vividly certain moments in my life where I almost drowned, and different other things where I was facing adversity at school, and different things that happened to you as a young man growing up. So for me, the book was great. Obviously you want it to be nice. You want people to be able to be impacted by the things that are written in the book. But for me, just writing the book itself was a great accomplishment. And I definitely something that I enjoy doing. And hopefully those that are able to read the book, hopefully it'll have some type of impact in their life as well.
Wonderful. I think
Great.
it's awesome because what it says to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you finally sat down and said, okay, well, I'm going to pen this. You talk about all of the memories and, you talk about things that are brought back to your remembrance. Do you look back and say, wow, I made it? You know what I mean? God brought me through that, or and it kind of feels a little nostalgic to you, but then you want everybody to know that, God brought you from this point to this point. He has no respect of persons. So if he did it for Lamone, he can do it for you.
Yep.
Right?
That's exactly how I feel. I mean, I think all of us have a story to tell or a testimony or something that can impact the lives of others. But, sometimes we don't have the venue or the platform to be able to express it in a large range. So I think writing a book gives me a little more leeway as far as people being able to see, how transparent I was in the book. I made, obviously, as a human being, we all make mistakes. We make choices and make decisions. I think one of the major things that has brought me to where I am today is that I had a good foundation growing up. I was raised in a two-parent home with very strong Christian values. We were, as you read the book, you can see very stringent upbringing where my parents really didn't allow us to party and hang out. And you all know, I'm sure everybody had the rule you had to be in before the street lights came on. And, you couldn't hang out at the parties and different things like this. So just a very, very strict upbringing. And then once you become an adult, or you believe you can start doing adult things. And I think that's what happened at DePaul. I got out and I was on my own and was able to make my own decisions, didn't have a curfew, didn't have someone looking over my shoulder, but yet and still there was still an upbringing or part of me or my foundation that I always still remembered. And it kept me in certain parameters. Did I stray a little bit? Yeah, I did, but like I said, you make choices and decisions, but little by little bit, I just started to realize and focus on, you shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be doing this. I was telling my son, I remember growing up as a young boy, I was probably in high school or in college. And I remember Michael Jordan was pretty famous at that time here in Chicago. And he had gotten an earring. And I really wanted to get an earring. A lot of the NBA players were wearing earrings. Some college players were wearing earrings. And I wanted to get one too, but I just started to think, my little brothers are watching me. And, even though I hadn't accepted the Lord at that particular time, I decided not to get the earring because I didn't want it to have a negative impact on my brothers or make them feel that they had to do it because I was doing it, because I was the oldest boy in the family. So I think your upbringing plays a large role in keeping you grounded, helping you to see that there's a bigger picture. And as you start sometimes to get outside those lines, there are certain things that will rear you back and get you back on track. And so that's what I found out when I was away at school, that there were a lot of things to get into, drugs, alcohol, a lot of things that I mentioned in the book. But thankfully, I didn't get addicted to alcohol or get addicted to drugs. Never tried to smoke, never tried to do drugs. Did a little bit of alcohol, but it didn't become something that I became addicted to. So I just, like I said, all that had to do with just my upbringing. And so I'm thankful for my parents. I acknowledged them in the book about the impact that their lives made on mine. And I definitely took a lot of rules and regulations and instill those into my children as well. So you can just see it's generational.
Well, speaking of your children and your posterity with respect to this book, how important was it for you to be as candid as you were?
my daughter always said, my oldest daughter Tatiana, she always asks me, Dad, you need to make sure before you put any pictures in here that we get to sign off on that. And so I picked some pictures that I thought were nice. I said some things in there that I thought were good for people to understand, as a parent raising children and some of the difficulties that I face. When your children are born, you don't come with a roadmap of how to raise these children. So a lot of the things is that, we take the narrative from how we were raised and, apply some of those things. And then, when you raise your own children, you realize that some of the things that your parents did were good for you, not necessarily all the things that they did is how you're going to raise your children. So, I had to learn that. I had to learn how to discipline and love my children. I remember when I was growing up, I think one of the most important things that, my parents used to tell me is that when they told us to do something, we didn't have the opportunity to question or ask them why.
That's right.
But, with my children, I gave them an opportunity to express themselves, obviously in a respectful way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was one of the major things that I instituted. I wanted my children to be able to communicate to me and even tell me, well, Dad, we don't think that's right. You can voice your opinion, but, I'll try to hear you out and learn from it. So, yeah.
Beautiful. I think that is absolutely beautiful.
It is. It is. You were talking earlier, about writing the book and some of your experiences and how you, pretty much was brought back full circle.
Sure.
With your faith. Of course, the one scripture that just came to mind, train up a child, the way they should go.
Mhm.
Because I'm a testament to that. You mentioned, oh yeah, I strayed. I did a little bit of this, a little bit of that, or whatever. I think we all did.
Yeah.
For sure.
But then, like you said, how we were raised, it was important, what was instilled in us and what we were taught. And I don't have any children. I know sometimes people tell me, you probably can't tell me because you don't have any children. But I firmly believe that, of course, it's very important what you put into them. And then trust what you put into them. Trust what you've taught them because it's going to come back around.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They may go and say and do this, that,
Mhm.
the other. And, you may look up one day and say, that doesn't even look like my child,
Mm-hmm.
but trust what you have instilled, especially if you
Mhm.
put the word in them.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to come back up. It is going to come back up, probably later than sooner.
Oh, yeah.
But it will. And so that's all I kept thinking about when I was reading your book. It was like, and I'm sure that's probably what you were thinking about too as you were
Mhm.
writing the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But it's so important, as parents,
Mm-hmm.
what you instill in your children.
And then for us to be upfront. I know I keep harping on the candidness.
Yeah.
But
I love the
think that,
transparency.
the Tati and Elise and Lamone, they needed to know what their parents, especially their dad experienced.
Sure.
Because a lot of times the young people today think we didn't go through anything.
True.
They think that we were just, we're here and we got to this place, from the time we were born. But we did go through some things. And I think it's important for them to also know you don't always have to bump your head.
You don't have to bump your head. That's
Mhm.
true. But I also agree then that those very important points. So they won't repeat
Right.
or make mistakes or whatever. But then they also need to know, like you said, what you went through, know what came down through, their heritage, down through
Mhm.
the line or
Mhm.
whatever. It's so much that goes into that.
Yes.
But they definitely need to know. So yeah, I appreciate your transparency and your honesty too in this book as well. Sometimes when I'm reading books, I'm like, wow, they were kind of transparent. Ooh, my hat is off to you when you do that. Because I always tell people, the quickest way to get help is to admit you need it.
Yep.
But
That's true.
but also when you share, the things that you've dealt with you've gone through, you never know exactly that the person next to you may have gone through the exact same thing, but how they see you, come out of it,
Mhm.
Yes.
or how you dealt with it, can be a help to them.
That's right.
So it's important. I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. We're just going to listen to a little bit of music, and then we'll come back for more with these two wonderful guests that I have on today. I'm still so excited. I am excited. My sister's here. No, let me stop. Gwendolyn Gaston Gray is in the house, and then also Lamone Lampley, basketball great and author of 7 Foot Faith. So come back for more of Mind, Body, and Soul right here on Intellectual Radio.
other God beside thee, and we stand here and reverence your name. For you are worthy to be lifted up. Please receive our sincere worship. For you are the mighty God we serve. All the earth proclaim. The mighty God we serve. We serve a mighty God, mighty God. Let the angels bow down. Let heaven and earth adore him, yeah. God we serve. What a mighty God we serve. The creator of all things. There is no other God beside thee, and we stand here in reverence your name. For you are worthy to be lifted up. Please receive our sincere worship. For you are the mighty God we serve. All the earth proclaim. The mighty God we serve. We serve a mighty God. Mighty God. Oh, let angels bow before. Let heaven and earth adore. We serve a mighty God. God we serve. We serve a mighty God. God we serve. He is holy, magnificent God. There's no one beside thee. Let us see his majesty. Magnificent God, you're worthy. Yes, you are. Let us declare that he is holy, magnificent. No one beside thee. Let us declare that he is holy, magnificent. There is no one beside thee. Let us declare. Come on and say his majesty. His majesty.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back. This is Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette, and I'm Annette Harris. We're here on Intellectual Radio, and we are live. So, in case you're just not joining us, I have introduced my guests. We've done a little bit of chatting here. And it's a great thing. We're going to highlight today this wonderful book, this wonderful project. You all, please don't laugh at me with my post-it notes. I have it in here for a reason. 7 Foot Faith. Let me take the post-it notes out because I don't want them to think your book looks like that. And I have the author here in the studio, Mr. Lamone Lampley. Some of you all may recognize this face. You may recognize this height. I'm sorry, I had to say that. And he is a former player of DePaul University. You played center.
Forward and center. Yep.
Forward and
Power
center.
forward and center.
I just said center because of his height. But and then you also played professionally.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
My sister's laughing
She
at me
knows
today.
nothing about basketball.
Oh, yes, I do. I cheered for them, whatever they told me to cheer. Okay. And so we have him here on this afternoon because he is a new author, and we're going to push this book. Let me do this. Let me ask you to share with my listeners where they can find your book, because we want them to be able to purchase it and to be able to enjoy this great read as we have. Where can they find your book?
Well, they can go to two places. They can go to 7footfaith.com, all one word. And there it'll talk a little bit about me as an author, and also it'll give them a link to Amazon where they can purchase it, either ebook and or paperback, and then also they can go to Amazon.com directly and just put in 7 Foot Faith, and then it'll pop up, and then they can purchase it that way as well.
Okay. All
Yep.
right. So I'm going to, while we're talking here, I'm going to try and put that into the feed here where they can find your books. And that is 7 Foot Faith.
Faith.com.
7 is spelled out.
Right.
Correct?
That
Okay.
is correct.
All right. That sounds wonderful. All right, you guys. So, and you all are very talented. You can kind of toggle over to another page and go ahead and order the book while we're on the air.
That's right.
You can do that. How about that? Sounds good to everybody? Sounds good to
order
me.
the Kindle version from Amazon as well.
Okay, they can. But, go ahead and get the book. You guys need a book in your hand. But no, there is a Kindle version also, and that's actually good to know for people on the go, because I know many people are like that. Let's see, Gwen, you mentioned that you wanted to kind of talk about the book a little bit more. You want to start us off? Because I have so much.
Okay. Well, you know what? I have so many bookmarks, and the wonderful thing about this book is that it shares. It goes through a period. It really and truly is chronological, but there are excerpts where you expound on certain things and then you bring it back to that time and place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's absolutely wonderful. But you laugh when you read it.
Yes.
Your heart goes out when you read it. So you go through this whole range of emotions. It's almost like a movie, a good movie. It's a good book. When it can take you through the range of emotions, then you've done something well. But I kind of laughed about one passage, and this is shortly after your father gives his life. I think you were 12 years old. He gives his life to the Lord.
Somewhere
and you,
there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you talk about, is it your aunt?
My aunt, my great aunt.
Yeah, your great aunt, Leilani.
Leilani, yep.
And he talks about the food and the cooking. He said, but the only thing you don't want to ask her to do is to pray before the meal. Yes. Talk a little bit about that. Why not?
Well, my great aunt, who has been living for the Lord probably at least 30, 35 years, and she's heavy into prayer. And so a lot of times when we would go over there for the holidays, specifically either Thanksgiving or Christmas, we would all gather around, and primarily she wanted to gather in the kitchen. We would hold hands, and she had just finished baking and cooking. So the room, it was a small kitchen, but so we're all standing there and it's hot in there, and she's praying and she's going on and on and on and on. And I mentioned something that's a little laughable. I say that even though the Bible says pray without ceasing, I think she takes it to another level. So sometimes she had to be cut off, and we would, like I said, just due to the heat that was the people and the heat itself, you just be very hot in that kitchen. But obviously she played a big role. I mentioned her as the matriarch of the family who helped lead my dad and then eventually, me to Christ. So a lot of respect for her. She's still around. She made 95, I think, last August.
Wow.
So
Ooh.
That's a
I
blessing.
just spoke with her probably a few days ago. She had got a little cold, but she's still doing well, and her faith is still strong.
Awesome.
Yep.
Absolutely, positively
That's a
beautiful.
blessing.
And it's nice when you can have that in your family. And it's nice when you
Yes.
can recollect. But I really laughed because he said they were in the kitchen. It was 100 degrees. But because she was praying so long, their hands got cold because they were so hungry. That's where Jesus wept comes in.
Right. Exactly. Either that or you just slide on over and get you a piece of chicken while she but then you probably get in trouble for that.
That's right.
But no, those are great memories.
It really is. And then you talk about the fact that she helped to lead your dad to Christ. And what I thought was wonderful was that now your dad drove a bus.
Yep.
CTA.
CTA. Yep.
CTA bus, Chicago. You guys grew up. Was it considered Peel Hill?
We were actually a little east of there. So
Okay.
grew up at 89th and Oglesby.
Okay.
It's just a little east of Pill Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And good neighborhood. At that particular time when we moved into that neighborhood, white flight was starting to take off.
Yes.
So a lot of the
Mm.
white people were starting to move out to the suburbs. And we actually moved into our home in 1970.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically it became all black, pretty much an all black community.
Mm-hmm.
But I talk a little bit about community as well. I talk
Yes.
about how, when I was growing up as a child, not only were your parents watching out for you, but also people in the community, if they saw you doing stuff, they would call you over there. They would let you know, I'm going to tell your dad, I'm going to
That's
tell your
right.
mom, so you often hear the story or the line that it takes a village to
It does.
raise a child. And so during my life as a child growing up, we had those parents there that were actually concerned and would correct you and wouldn't be scared. And I alluded to a little bit how we need to bring some of that back, because I think that when you start to close, your blinds and turn a deaf ear and, act like you don't see things that are happening in your community,
Mm-hmm.
we start to lose our children. And so they need to know that we are concerned about them,
Yes.
and even we still need to get that respect back for our children. So a lot of us put on us as in this millennial age now where, children need to see positive people doing positive
Absolutely.
things. And too often and too many times, you see either the parents or the grandparents, take a back seat and things happening. And I think that's why we see what we see in our nation today is that a lot of the leadership has just subsided. And so
Mm-hmm.
we need to be able to get back to where we were before and raise our children and our grandchildren and let people know in the community, specifically our young people, that,
Mm-hmm.
you can do well.
That's right.
You need to be disciplined. You need to realize that you need to show respect to your elders, to authorities. And so I think that's something we greatly need in our communities today. So hopefully that'll inspire some that read the book that we need to get back to basics, and that's being a part of our children's lives.
Amen. I think that's wonderful, Lamone. You just proved the point I was about to bring up. And I'd like to read an excerpt if I can.
Sure,
Would you give me
sure.
permission to do that? Because to me, it is so profound. The attitude of families getting involved in how children conduct themselves in and around the community has to be resurrected. This new age thinking of, I don't want to get involved, has allowed this new generation of children to drown out adult voices, right? And hold us captive and prisoners in our homes and neighborhoods. Our inability to communicate and total reliance on law enforcement is not the answer, because we are the real stakeholders and the ones affected when we become silent. We must initiate change by opening our curtain blinds, eyes, and ears, and quit hiding behind the wall of fear. If we want a true revival, that's what we have to do. Last but not least, we need to get out of our comfortable lazy boy chairs that have paralyzed us, put down our smartphones that have dumbed us down, lay down the television remote, Netflix, Hulu, and
Wow.
Comcast that has rocked us into a perpetual comatose state, and get on our knees and cry out to God that He will give us boldness and courage to raise not only our children and grandchildren, but also to have a concern for Pookie and them down the street.
That's right.
I thought that was absolutely
It's
correct.
profound.
And you're right, Lamone. That's what we've lost. We've lost the keepers of the village, with the, I'm not going to say anything. And, that vote of silence, and I'm not going to tell. I mean, that's why it's gotten out of hand, because anytime these same children and youth that we're supposed to be the example for and lead, they feel like, we don't matter. and we're not the keeper of that community, they're going to run rampant, just like you're saying. So yes, I thought that was just so eloquently put. Thank you for that.
Yeah, another key I think is communication, and so even in with technology, which I think can be good and can be a very useful tool. When I was riding the bus and the trains to DePaul to my job, I would get on those trains and get on those buses, and you kind of look around at people, whether they're young people or adults, and everybody's got their smartphone out and they got their headphones on, and you couldn't really communicate or share anything with the young people because we're all kind of focused on our phones and what we're into. And so I think the ability to communicate and share has just been really just, like you said, paralyze us with the ability to be able to communicate, not with our own children, but just like I said, people that sit next to you on the train or the bus. We lost that ability through technology. And so, like I said, technology, I think, can be a good tool for advancing, but it has really just cut down on communication.
Yeah.
See a lot of people texting now.
Mhm.
They're really not sharing voice to voice. It's more so technology to technology. So
Mhm.
I think we lose something, in that translation. We're not able to communicate with human beings and individuals on a daily basis.
And I think we lose feeling too.
Yes.
Oh yeah, you
Because
do.
if we don't have that human interaction, just like the saying is, where IT people are concerned, and accountants deal with numbers. IT people deal with technology. They're not good with dealing, one-on-one with
each
humans or
other.
people. And I think you're right. The more we delve into the technology and we're texting and we're emailing and we're hooked to these devices, then the less feeling we become toward each other.
Yep.
Each other's feelings, each other's, thoughts or what have you. Then that becomes, when we do that, we don't care. So we don't care about, shooting somebody or doing this or doing that, because that feeling's not there. You're right. We've got to get back to that human touch, to that human, reality.
Very good.
Very good, very good. Yeah, had good dialogue going on there. I enjoyed that. Let me do this. Let me just tell you that are listening to us on YouTube and or the station's website. You can call in 708-223-8953. I did type it in the chat there, but if you would like to call in, please do so. 708-223-8953, and you can jump in on the conversation with us. I'm going to read your comments because you've already started doing that. Or if you just want to talk to Mr. Lampley, you want to say hi, hey, maybe you remember him back in the day. There were some individuals that were on the post that said, "Oh, I went to church with him. I know him." And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even know they knew each other." But it's a small world. It's a
is.
small world. It can be good. Let me read a few comments. A few comments here. Acknowledge some people. Brandy, I see you here on Facebook. I'm sorry, I see you on YouTube. I just got a message from Randy Pettis. He's listening.
Oh, Randy.
Hey, Randy, what's going on,
Randy, I really need you to call in. Would you do that? He's probably really not going to call in now that I called him out. 708-223-8953. Let's see. Angela is here on YouTube, and she says, "Oh, some of them, they were looking for me on Facebook Live, and they were like, 'Where are you?' I'm getting messages all over the place." It's funny, as you guys are talking about technology. Don't think that I'm just all into this. I'm just trying to manage my listeners here. So
We understand.
worries.
We understand.
but Angela says here, we have lost the community. Just that. Oh yeah, our parents formed a village. That is very true there. And these are very key points. I'm so glad you talked about parents, your upbringing, and what they brought to you. I have, okay, let's see here. I'll let you start it off, Gwen. I have a couple more questions here. Now, how long did it take you to write this book?
I would say probably about a year and a half. And
Really?
yeah. And you
Okay.
can see it's still not, it still didn't come out, a very thick book, but for the most part, I'm happy with how it turned out. Sometimes, they have a certain requirement of how many pages you have to have in there. So probably close to the minimum as far as pages are concerned. But when I was writing it, once it's formatted and things like that, it didn't come out to as many pages as I thought it really would. But it took me a lot of while. And I did come up at some point, where people say they got writer's block. So there were actually days when no thoughts were coming, and I didn't want to force them. I didn't want to make them up. I wanted everything to be real and feel that way in the moment of how I felt. So there were some days when I actually did not write, and just didn't feel the inspiration and things like that. So, and then days came back where I just started remembering stuff, and then I would go and start typing. So I think, for those that are considering writing a book, I think you should journal and just put down as many thoughts as you can. And after a while, you realize that I do have something to share. I do have my own story. And so I encourage people out there that are considering writing a book, go ahead and write it. I didn't write the book because I wanted to sell 1 million copies. That wasn't my motivation at all. I mean, I do hope that it has some good success or whatever, but primarily for me, if anything, like I said, it was just very cathartic for me to write the book and bring back such a flood of memories and good thoughts, and even things that happened bad. You can look positively on them. I talked about the experience where I almost actually drowned, and at that particular time, it was in the early 70s after I had just saw Roots, and I had a lot of bitter emotions about race relations between blacks and whites of what I saw depicted on the screen. And eventually God saw that, and as a result, there was a Caucasian gentleman that actually saved my life.
Wow.
Came to save me, and I talk a little bit about that in the book. So just so many fond memories of growing up, and trial and error, and so brings me to the person that I've become today. So like I think Gwen mentioned earlier, everything happens for a purpose. The things you've gone through, there is a backstory to everybody's life, and there's some good emotions, some bad emotions about things, but eventually I think it all works out in the end.
Definitely. Oh my, you talked about that drowning incident, how you almost drowned. That was very powerful.
Yes.
The takeaway from that. Uh, and I'm sorry, I kind of laughed
go ahead.
at how you mentioned when you were being pulled out. You said, I was pulled out. And I looked, I was like, dang, it was a white man. I laughed so hard at that. Because that's probably would be, someone's immediate reaction. At
least it was mine based on what I had saw.
Right, from your thoughts,
Yes,
right.
Yes.
From what you saw and everything. Because come on, be honest. Every one of us that looked at but yeah, it you left away from that. You were upset. If you walked down the street and you saw somebody that was, white or not your color, whatever, you're, and they hadn't even done anything to you,
Anything.
But it was so amazing what you learned from that. Now, wait, can I ask you, did you learn that immediately? Was that an instant
it wasn't. I mean,
lesson that
obviously
you
it
learned?
was a blessing that someone had saved me, and like I said, just happened to be a person of Caucasian persuasion. I think eventually, I grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood, and so I talk a little bit about this as well in the book, that when I left the south side of Chicago to go to DePaul, I remember going to school, and so I started looking around and being in class. I can remember one of my first days in class, you know how you just start surveying stuff, and I'm looking around this class of about 45 people, and I'm looking around and I'm like, I think I'm the only black guy in this class.
Yes.
It might have been one other former student athlete that was in there, maybe on a track team or something like that. But I was in a PWI, predominantly white institution.
That's right.
And so transitioning from an all black community to an area or a community where it's mostly all Caucasian, there was a large learning curve for me. And so and Gwen can to that, even in lunchtime, all the whites would sit in one particular area, all the blacks would. So we were still segregated, even though we were in a school where there were blacks and whites attending. And so I think, as time go on and you got camaraderie among your teammates and people in class. And so you just start to realize, everybody's not after you. Everybody's not racist. Everybody's not prejudiced. But it's something that I had because for 17, 18 years of my life, I grew up just living in a neighborhood where there was all black people.
Right.
And that's understandable because I think, too, because we are who we are as a community, there's always that kindred spirit. So, and, honestly, I still do this today. So I know what you're talking about in terms of the classroom, especially my first year at DePaul, because remember, I was the only black female cheerleader.
Yes.
I remember that.
And so there's that.
Yay.
You broke the color barrier.
Yeah, broke the color barrier.
She did.
Cheerleaders. Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And so, that was different in and of itself. But yes, you're right. As soon as I got to DePaul, it was predominantly white, and those black students that either lived on campus or that commuted, we all knew each other because there had to be that sticking together, I guess, if you would,
Mhm.
and not so much because we were militant or we were against, other cultures. It was just because we knew we could relate to each other. The other black students,
Sure.
if
Yep.
nothing else, so that you guys could study together. Maybe you could share notes or whatever the case may be. And I still do that today. When I travel, I go into a restaurant. That's the first thing I look for. Okay, do I see a sister or brother?
Wow.
I mean,
Well, yeah.
because sometimes you just don't know where you are.
Yeah.
And honestly, you don't know how you're going to be received. Unfortunately, that's still our reality. So we look for that,
Mm-hmm.
that sameness,
Yes.
which I still consider oneness, because I love my people. I love the Black community. And, there are a lot of things that are happening in here that we wish we would. But again, I think it comes back to the village elders. We have to be able to step up.
Mm-hmm.
And,
It does. It does.
Yeah.
Definitely. Did you want to add to that, or?
Sure. Yeah. So, like you said, experience gives you an opportunity to meet people, and so, like I said, I had the experience as a young man at 13, being saved by a Caucasian, and then later on, I was able to start a foundation called MOCA, Men of Color Connected for Higher Achievement. And profoundly enough, a gentleman that I met, Caucasian guy named Steve Sarowitz, and his wife Jessica, became donors of the program, and probably the greatest donors that I've had over the last 2 or 3 years. And that blessing came through someone of another color. So I think in business, in sports and things like, I've learned to be able to network and give people an opportunity to be who they are and show them who I am. And so I think that, as we learn more and more about each other, we can develop a commonality, even with people of different backgrounds and different cultures, and
Absolutely.
realize that they can become assets to you, and you can draw a lot of strength from them. So, I think that, race, even though it played a large role in my early years developmental, I've learned to love people for who they are, not
That's
what
right.
color they are. So
That's
yeah.
right. That's your expanded village.
It is.
Yes. At
And-
55, it's your expanded village, right?
And it's so much. I take away so much from that. Also, I am not well versed in this, but there is a scripture that talks about. Somebody has to help me out with this.
Oh, go ahead. Paraphrase or however you're going to do it.
That talks about not, basically don't be, colorblind, or, to think that somebody outside of your race is not good enough or what have you. And I did a botched up job of doing that, referring to that scripture. But I think you all know what I'm talking about. But another thing that I thought about, going back to the drowning incident, and how, the Lord allowed the Caucasian man to save you.
Yes.
And you even talked about how you learned later that he ran back once he heard the cries of individuals, when you were drowning. He ran back to
save me. Came from
to
a long
save you.
distance. Yeah, because actually, my family was right there. My parents were there. I don't think they could swim. My cousins were there. One of my cousins jumped in, who was very short. I was probably at age 13. I was probably like 6'4", 6'5", and he jumped in. He was probably 5'7", and because I was just frantic, he had to let me go. I was going to drown him as well. And so people were just screaming and stuff like that. And like, I later found out that this white man, who I never saw again, ran from like meters or just a long distance to come in. And like I said, it's like when I came out of that water and I saw that white face, it was just like, it was a life-changing situation. And so, like you said, initially I was shocked, but then I realized from that day forward, that don't judge people by the color of their skin.
That's it.
I think that's even a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King, but the character that they are. So, from that point on, things little bit by little bit, I started to realize that just because people don't look like you does not mean that they don't want the best for you. And
True.
so, it was a great learning experience from that point on. And then, like I said, later on in life, when I went to DePaul and predominantly white institution, and developed some good friendships there, even with the AD there, Jeannie Lenti Ponsetto, who eventually hired me on before I took the job as executive director of this new foundation. So, I just learned to establish, like I said, a lot of good relationships with people of all races, colors, just throughout the country and even throughout the world, because I still have friends over in Italy and Spain and Greece.
Hmm.
And so, I think it just helped me to become a more well-rounded individual.
It did.
Beautiful.
And the Lord knew where you were going to go.
That's
Yep.
right.
He said, I'm not just going to leave you in that neighborhood that you grew up in. You're
Mhm.
going to come in contact with so many people
Worldwide.
of different persuasions.
Right.
Yes.
Italy. You even talked about the benefactor for I'm not sure if that's his title of Mocha, the one
Yes.
Mhm.
that
Steve Sarowitz.
so you still had that closed mind. Then him
Mhm.
coming to you and saying something,
Yeah.
that
wouldn't
this
have
is what he
accepted.
wanted to do. Right? You wouldn't have
Exactly.
accepted it, or he
Right.
might not have even approached you. I don't know,
Mhm.
but the Lord had to get you to that point, and it started when you 13.
13. That's right. Yep.
That is absolutely
So
incredible. And it continued. Lamont, can you talk a little bit about your 4 years at DePaul, 82 to 86, and talk about, and before you do that, I do want to truly say that Lamont's book, in my opinion, really highlights his father as a man.
yes,
It highlights
it
the
does.
role of a father, the role of a good father.
Hmm.
And I think it's absolutely wonderful because obviously that's what molded you. Even though your father didn't accept Christ until you were 12 years old, you talk about in the book how a lot of things were brought out, even just as a result of that. He started cooking and these exotic dishes and all of this wonderful stuff, things that they didn't even know, or talents they didn't even know he had.
Like, who's this?
Exactly. So having said that, talk about the 4 years at DePaul. Talk about that disappointment. Kind of delve into a little bit about even playing basketball, the coaching staff, honestly, if you would, because I know you all have stories.
Sure.
And talk about that disappointment and what role your dad played in the fact that you stayed and you graduated.
Oh, wow. And
Loaded
that's one of
question, huh?
the
That was a good question.
great question, because I do remember finally my days at DePaul. And obviously, when I started at DePaul, which was, like you said, the year of 82, 83, that was my freshman year, I was highly recruited out of CVS High School. And obviously, when you come there, you have expectations or aspirations of, how much you're going to play, how well you're going to do. And so for my freshman year, that didn't necessarily never materialize. I can still remember to this day, I played a total of 32 minutes for the whole year.
Mm.
And so that was very, very pretty disappointing for me, especially being highly recruited, and I could have went to other colleges and things of that nature and probably played a lot more. But at that particular time, DePaul was a very popular
Yeah.
college basketball team,
Powerhouse.
and powerhouse. And so, during my sophomore year, there was a particular stretch there where I had got into some games and played pretty well, and then the next 3 games I never played again.
Mm.
And so that was very disappointing. So like as was mentioned in the book, I called my dad and I told my dad, I said, Dad, you need to come up here, talk to the coaches. My words were, they're not treating me right. This is not fair. I do everything they ask me to do, and for whatever reason, they don't play me. And so there was even an article that came out in the Sun Times written by Joel Barrick, and he talked about how come Lampley doesn't play. And so I remember my dad came up to the school, and we went into the office with Coach Ray, who's a Hall of Fame coach, and
Yes.
went in there with his assistants. And my dad sat down, and they just basically explained why they felt, I was not playing and they wanted to play me. And I remember just sitting there, and I'm like, when is my dad going to say something?
Mhm.
When is my dad going to come out and show, hey, play my son, play my son? It never happened. It never happened.
Wow.
And I can remember after we left that meeting, they said everything pretty much they wanted to say to my dad, just listen. And so I got in the car, and I just remember it was a quiet ride home back to right back to the to McCabe Hall,
Mhm.
which is where our
Yes.
dorms were. And so I asked my dad finally, I said, Dad, why didn't you say anything? And my dad said, well, I heard what the coaches said, just so mild mannered and laid back. And then I began to cry. I just like, Dad, you let me down. You were supposed to speak on my behalf. I'm your son. How come you didn't speak up for me? And my dad didn't say anything. And so finally I said, okay, I see this is not going to go the way I want it to go. It wasn't the meeting I want to have. And so as I was getting out the car, at that time I was angry, and I talk about that in the book. My
Yes.
my anger level was at an all-time high with my dad. I couldn't even look at my dad. I don't even know if I said bye to my dad. But as I got out the car, my dad still rings true to this day. My dad said 5 words: God has not forgotten you.
Mm, mm, mm.
Wow.
Still has an impact.
Yep.
I'm about to cry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Mm.
for whatever reason, I grabbed hold to those words because I was looking to grab hold to something,
Right.
and I grabbed hold to those words. And for some reason, as I was walking to the dorm, it just seemed like everything just changed, like in a moment. I mean,
Mhm.
nothing really changed physically or something like that, but I had been raised in a Christian home, and I saw, different things that had happened, by my dad living
Mhm.
for God. And so when my dad said God hadn't forgotten me, I took hold to that, and I can remember I just felt better. Those
Mhm.
5 words impacted me even to this day. That at some point I didn't know how it was going to happen, when it was going to happen, but because my dad, I had a lot of confidence in my dad
Mhm.
and his belief in God, that God was going to change the situation around.
Yes.
And so as a result, I'm sure you all remember I talk about in the story how I go upstairs,
Uh-huh.
and it seemed like there's an elevator there, and I'm thinking no, I'm not even gonna ride the elevator. I feel so good in my spirit. I'm gonna walk up the stairs, and it's like I was jumping the stairs, going up there, and nothing had changed. Nothing had
Mhm.
changed,
Right.
but those 5 words impacted
But
me
you
of
did.
what
Wow.
my dad had said to me. And so I get in the room and I grab a Shaka Khan album
Mhm.
and I start playing, and I just blasted. I was like,
Uh-huh.
I don't care if people on the floor are gonna be angry or upset, but people are gonna rejoice with me because things
Mhm.
are gonna change. They were going to change.
That's
And little
right.
bit by little bit, I started to play more,
Mhm.
started to get better. And so it did change. It did change.
Yes.
But those 5 words had
Mhm.
such a profound impact on my faith,
Mhm.
even though I was not saved, I was not living for God.
Mhm.
But because my dad said it and I believed it,
Mhm.
that started my faith at that point to really have faith in God at that age. So that was probably 19, 20 years old.
Mhm.
And from that point on, it just seemed like my faith started to grow.
Planted a
And so
seed.
that's how it comes down to this book now, and it parallels how, as a young boy, my faith just started to grow along with my height. And so that's why I actually titled the book 7 Foot Faith.
All right.
Awesome.
All right.
Yep.
So that
Woo!
you didn't have any kind of
Go ahead.
as far as the title is concerned, that was the perfect type of title for you then, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's awesome. Let me jump back to YouTube. They're commenting all over the place. So let me read these real quick. Let's see here. Elder Kevin McGee, thank you for watching. We're going to play on our next break. We're going to play a spoken word that was
Okay.
penned by Elder McGee. He
Oh,
normally pins a spoken word in relation to the topic of discussion for mind, body, and soul. I feel
I'm
fortunate.
looking forward to
So,
it as well. Looking forward to it as well.
okay. Sir Walter is on. He said, "Hey, that's Gwen." You don't see anybody else, Sir Walter? Okay.
Oh, Walter Downey.
No, Walter
Oh,
Jones.
I wish
okay.
Walter
Because we
was.
used to call
Yeah.
Sir. Remember, he
You
used to
sure
be
did,
announced.
Sir Walter.
Sir
Oh,
That's right.
Walter
oh
Downey
my
Sure
used to be
did.
announced.
goodness.
But go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt you.
Good
Go ahead.
memories, good
Yep.
memories. Okay. Let's see. Brandy says here, sometimes you can unlearn and break away from racist thoughts and until we are immersed into a new environment and experience the culture for yourself. Experience can be positive, but not always. So that's she's
Very
thanking
good.
you for
Very
your
good
sharing
comment.
your
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
experience.
pretty profound. And
Hmm.
Yes.
and all the time being aware,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
because not everybody means well, but not everybody means bad. So
True.
having that whether you deem it fortunate or unfortunate, as a people, as a community, that's the position that we're in. I mean, that's our
Right.
reality.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Definitely. Demetrius says here, with the admission scandal, oh, here's a question for you.
Ooh.
With the admission scandal that is currently in the forefront of the news headlines, how does Mr. Lampley feel that could potentially affect the environment of student athletic scholarships? Oh,
Oh,
Mm, good question.
yeah. Very good. I think I just read recently about this story but obviously a lot of people that are involved with that come from privileged backgrounds. And
Hmm.
so I think people that have money, have influence, can sometimes use it to their own detriment. But I don't think it'll affect uh, the athletic scholarships, at these universities. So I think it was something that needed to come out because we've realized, like I said, that there's always an underlying current
Hmm.
of
hmm,
things that are going on in college. And so I don't think it'll have a, a great bearing effect on student athletes or college athletics at all, but I think it was something that needed to be brought to the forefront. And obviously, we can see that people are still doing things that are, not morally correct, and so,
Hmm.
it's been being exposed. And so, I think from this, we'll find out not just these cases that have taken place, but it'll be a lot more widespread. And so it'll just we'll be able to look on it as a nation and realize that
Hmm.
there needs to be change, specifically with people in positions of power and privilege.
Yes,
Definitely.
that's absolutely positively awesome, and he's right. And his keywords to me were still.
Yes.
It didn't just start happening in
No, it did not.
2011 with this particular investigation. It was going on when you and I were in school. It was going on before,
Hmm.
that time where, I can speak of instances even when I was in school. I had a
It's a long
girl that
time
actually,
ago.
yep, no.
Just kidding.
one of the she wasn't my roommate, but she was like a dorm mate, and we were kind of in the same boat because we both majored in chemistry. We took a lot of classes together. Really nice girl, Caucasian.
Hmm.
But she just wasn't in the same boat as me. And I
Mm.
remember countless times having to go downtown and speak with Curtis Watkins because he was
Yes.
over
The late
finance.
Curtis. Yes.
Exactly, because we were behind on tuition, or we didn't have this for this quarter, or what have you.
Hmm.
And she would have like these outstanding, charges that were like $50,000, but she was still in school and she was allowed to, so there was that disparity there. I mean, I'm not saying that, DePaul could tell the difference by looking at somebody's name, who was or who wasn't, but there was just a difference.
It was.
And you're right, Lamone, it's being exposed now for what it is. Thank God. And then hopefully it brings to light, okay, this has been going on forever, and you can't use your privilege, or you shouldn't be using your privilege, to that end. If your child is not bright enough to make it into a Georgetown or DePaul University or Northwestern or Harvard, then that's their lot. That doesn't mean they can't go to school. You just have to find what best fits them and not use your power, so to speak, or your money, probably more in this case, to buy into that. I mean, the extremes when you think about that they went through, connecting and paying these coaches. Okay, well, put them on your team or whatever. That does take a space.
Yeah.
That takes a space of somebody who, could have had that scholarship. It
Hmm.
really and truly does. Or it takes the space overall in school for somebody who did have that grade point average or that college entrance exam, score to do it. Now they're going to be left out because of it. And it's just so unfair. And I'm kind of passionate about this because even in reading a little bit more about it, because my daughter Zavia, who's now 24, she applied to Georgetown, she applied to Harvard, and she, you think about, and she's the same age as the daughters of at least the two actresses, and it's
Hmm.
like, really? So did you take Zavia's space away? I mean, you think of think of it in terms of that.
Yes.
It may not necessarily be one for one, but I'm just saying, just the thought of it, it's just so unfair.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. Oh, okay. Well, thank you all for those comments. There's another one here I want to read. Let's see. Elder McGee says, high school is where I learned to experience diversity. Having attended Whitney Young, I had to get used to interacting with people of other races and who, to this day, I count as friends.
Beautiful.
And Brandy's commenting on the statement that your dad gave you. God has not forgotten you. She says, "My God." All right. Side note from Angela. She says, you know what, Angela? Okay. She says you can truly tell that Gwen and Annette are sisters. Yes, that's true. We are. We are sisters. Well, that's what they told me when I was born. So,
You were the Johnny come lately. You had no choice. You had to join.
I love
Actually,
her.
it was my hope that they take you back where they got you from, but
And
it
we're
all
not
worked
going to
out.
go into that
It worked
story because I could. Today's about Lamone,
Yes,
but I
it is.
could tell them how you treated me when I was born, but that's okay. That's my girl. I love her. You mess with her, you mess with me. I'll get you. Okay. I think that right here, maybe we can insert our spoken word if my producer is ready for me. We can listen to this. Elder Kevin McGee, again, has a show here on Saturdays at 12 noon Central Standard Time entitled Connections. And again, he blesses mind, body, and soul during the week with a spoken word. And I want you all to take a listen to this. And we'll come back.
faith. For all I trust him. But do we really? Do we really possess the faith that allows us to move mountains? You know, those mustard seeds? Better yet, have we allowed those mustard seeds of faith to germinate and grow until they reach, let's say, 7 feet tall? Because you see, in this day and time, with all that we have to contend with, all that we must deal with, we need great faith. And you see, this is not grandma's faith, but you have to have your own experience with faith and build upon it. Because when you look at the state of the world, wait a minute, we don't have to go that far. When you look at the bills that are due, yet your money has gone on strike, and then you go to the doctor and they tell you that of all the people in the world, you have them scratching their heads because they haven't seen what you have before. But they prescribe some things that probably won't work anyway. Then you realize that the other person in your relationship or marriage decides that they're not sure if it's going to work out. Those are the tests that determine the height of your faith. Tribulation worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope. Faith through all of what you have to go through will lead you to find hope. And hope, once found, will always bring you through. So put on your workout clothes and exercise your faith. It won't be easy starting out, but if you keep working at it, it'll get stronger and it will grow. Say goodbye to that 4 feet of faith that you started out with. Say hello to the 7 feet of faith that will make God say, well done.
All right, all right. That was wonderful. I normally try to do my snaps, but I can't snap with my right hand. So
Beautiful, beautiful.
all right.
Beautiful.
Anytime you get my producer shaking his head and smiling up and down, he liked it too.
Oh, that was on
Beautiful.
time. That was on time.
That was wonderful.
Yes.
I think Tony Jackson is watching. He says hello. He says we all look great. Well, thank you, Tony.
Oh, thank you, Tony.
Or as we know him, Big Daddy.
We love and miss you.
Good to hear you, Tony.
Yes, definitely. I did mention. I'm sorry, I failed to mention. Randy says he wants a book. So Randy, go to Amazon.com.
Hello.
Or 7footfaith.com.
Right.
Or 7 Foot Faith. I know you weren't trying to get one for free, were you, Randy? I'm just kidding.
Shout out to you, Randy. And let me say one other word. Today is my oldest daughter's birthday. Tatiana. Happy birthday. Tatiana is 26 today.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Beautiful young lady.
Yes.
Beautiful. Absolutely.
Oh, beautiful.
Inside and out.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. I hope you're enjoying your birthday. I don't know if you're watching or not, watching your dad, or if you're working. I don't know. But happy birthday to you. Someone's saying on here, excellent job, Elder McGee. Yes, again.
Oh, yeah.
Again. I
Shout out to Elder McGee.
Beautiful.
Great. I loved it.
Yes, definitely.
Oh, that was beautiful.
He's an elder in the Church of God in Christ. And I can just tell him, I'll just give him something maybe like a day before and he can just pin something. I mean, just so talented like that. The Lord really blesses him with that gift. Although he talks about me when I do give him stuff at the last minute. So
Well, he should be used to you by now.
I try not to do that. Let's see here. Okay, my gosh. A few more questions here. And I know we have a little bit of time before we end on today. Let me ask you, what has been, how long ago did the actual book come out? Has it been?
Also, it actually came out in February. So
Okay.
the ebook was out maybe like the first week in February, and then the paperback came out maybe around the 16th or the 17th of February. So
Okay.
not even a month yet
Okay.
that the paperback has been out.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Oh, I feel really privileged then to have you on this early.
And I'm privileged to be here.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Now, I know we kind of, Gwen at one point asked about your family. Now, what were your family's, what are their thoughts now that it's actually out? I mean, I know your daughter told you to make sure you get the right pictures and all of that, but what are their thoughts about the book now that it's out, and maybe what would they like to see?
My son doesn't say too much, the baby, but I think that my two daughters have enjoyed it. I actually had my first book signing at the Frankfurt Public Library on last Wednesday.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
a week from today, last week, I did my first book signing, and then hopefully we will have another book signing at Kilwin's in Hyde Park next month.
Oh,
So I don't have the
Wonderful.
date just yet, but as soon as I know, I can let you know. But yeah,
Yeah, that'll be
so
really
I think
nice.
they're happy. I think, for me, it was a sense of accomplishment. And I think my daughter has read some excerpts from the book. My wife, I think, told me she just finished the book today on a
Okay.
plane ride home.
Yeah,
Just
okay.
just like
About
you and
this
your
plane
sister.
Right,
ride.
right.
Yeah, yeah. So she texted me that when she knew I was coming. And she said, "I'm about 75%. I'll be done with the book by the time I land."
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful.
So
beautiful.
it's for me. It's been an opportunity, like I said, to get share my testimony with close friends and family. That's really initially uh, the targeted audience was for, is to give a little more insight into my upbringing and how my foundation helped prepare me for life, and what it has helped me to do thus far. And so I'm grateful for that. And like I said, if it extends its tentacles a little further, then thank God for that. But initially, just primarily just to give insight to families and friends about how my faith has really impacted my life.
Beautiful.
Definitely. Did you want to
Absolutely
add to
beautiful.
that?
You know what? Actually, no, but when you get a chance, because I have all kinds of things that I would love to bring up or talk about, but then that would spoil everything and nobody would buy the book.
Right.
So we're gonna just make sure we set that aside and trust that everybody will purchase it because it's absolutely wonderful. Can you talk a little bit about? I know we're not toward the end quite yet. Talk about where your extended family is now. Your brothers, your sister, your parents.
Okay. Yeah. So my mom and dad are thankfully still alive. My mom, she just made 76 this year.
Oh,
Beautiful,
wonderful.
February
beautiful.
2nd was her birthday, and my dad is about 75,
Hmm.
and so they still doing pretty well, getting up in age, just like I am, but doing well. And then my siblings, my sister Faye, still lives here in the area. She lives out in Calumet City.
Hmm.
And then my other siblings, I have four other siblings. So Kevin, he works at Riverside Brookfield
Okay.
uh, School, high school. Uh, then who else? Michael is home right now with my mom, so he kind of watches my mom throughout the day.
Hmm.
Okay.
And then Lee works for Northern Trust Bank.
Oh, nice.
And then Sean, the baby,
Hmm.
is out in California, which is where he attended school at. So actually, all four of my brothers played college basketball.
Hmm.
So Kevin was at Aurora, Michael was at UIC, Lee was at Western Kentucky University,
Hmm.
and then Sean played at the University of California. So we all, because of our height, I think the shortest boy of the family is about 6'4",
Wow.
and I'm the tallest at 6'11", even though my book says 7 foot. I'm about an
That's
inch
the
off.
faith.
About an inch
Faith
off.
with
Right,
it.
right, 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 right. The other inch is faith.
And that's right. There it
So
is.
they're all doing pretty well.
Mm.
I took actually a copy of the book over to Lelanie's house, where my great aunt. Her real
Mhm.
name is Corrine Starks, but we call her Lelanie. And she was happy that she didn't know she was going to be featured in the book, but she definitely played a
Mm.
prominent role in our faith. And so they're all doing pretty good. Like I said, with the majority of Sean, who was out in California, all of them are still pretty local here in the Chicago community,
Mhm.
and they all are doing pretty good.
That is wonderful. That's a testament to the way that you were raised. And of course, above all, God's grace. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Definitely, definitely. Let me ask you this question. Now, the basis of mind, body, and soul, and I believe how the Lord gave it to me, is to actually try to bridge the gap between psychological and spiritual aspects of everyday life.
Okay.
With that in mind, maybe can you tell me what would be, in your thoughts, maybe psychological application of your book and or spiritual applications?
Okay. So no, and I love the title, Mind, Body, and Soul. So the book, and I think no one really can be fully changed until they do give their life to God.
Mhm.
Because the Bible says, I'm going to quote a scripture here. The Bible says, "For as many as received him, to them he gave power
That's right.
to become the sons of God." So you have to accept Christ into your life to see change. I mean, I know people, they make changes, subtle changes, but and I talk a little bit about that in the book as well, where that true change comes when you give your life to God. Because if you could do it without God, then you would have done it by now.
That's right.
So the fact that you haven't done it, or you've reverted back to some of those old habits, shows that only God can really help you to make
Mhm.
the necessary changes in your life that are positive. And I talk about that, about how my dad, and it's not foreign. I talk about how his life, he was, even though he was a good disciplinarian in the home, he was a gambler. He did certain other things. And so, like Gwen mentioned earlier in this meeting here, that there were a lot of things that my dad he didn't spend the time with us like he should have, because he was out, you know, taking care of himself and doing the things that he enjoys. So I think that when you actually give your life to God, God gives you a new perspective or a
Yes.
new psychological mindset to start thinking about. We become servants, and we start to think about other people versus our own life, or being narcissistic about what pleases me. How can I do this? How can I better myself? But
Right.
obviously, I think we're all here to help others, and so
Serving, that's
we
right.
only can make that change when we give our life to God. So I think when you give your life to God, He'll give you a new perspective, a new mind set, a new heart, which is most important thing, because everything pretty much it stems from the heart. If you have an evil heart, you really can't love properly.
That's right.
So God gives you a new heart and a new mind, and so that's really what helped change my life around. Was that, some people can say, "Oh, I was a morally good person. I didn't do a lot." But if you want real change, then that change comes when you give your life to God.
That's
So
right.
hopefully that helps to
Beautiful.
answer somewhat of the
Beautiful.
question.
Perfect answer. Thank you so much. I always like to hear what your thoughts are on it. I'm such a psych nerd. I was all over the place mentally with this book. I really was.
Okay.
But I want to make mention, and maybe I can. We can kind of probably go around the table with this question
Oh, sure. Go right
in
ahead.
terms of what was your favorite part of this book, maybe favorite chapter or something that jumped out at you, or was there something, oh man, I shouldn't have put that in there, or
Well, some people want to say, like my mother-in-law, God bless her heart, said, "I want to know who was the young lady that was at the hotel with you." I was like, "Mom, you trying to stir up some stuff here?"
Funny.
And even my wife said that. Who was the young lady? So I probably get pummeled a little bit about that. They want to know, man. And in the book, I say unnamed person. I don't mention the name.
Right.
But I think probably the most laughable, or even though it has a serious side, I talk about the dog.
Yes.
I talk about the dog and how
That's kind of funny.
my wife wanted this dog and I didn't want a dog. She grew up with dogs in her home, all her life as a young lady growing up. And we didn't really grow up with dogs. And so my wife really wanted this dog, and I did not want the dog. And my wife said, well, I told my wife, well, I want a son. And my wife was like, we're done. We had Tatiana and Elise, and she said, that's it. Just the kitchen is closed. We're not having any more children. I was like, well, we need a boy to carry on the name. So we came to a reasonable agreement that if I allow her to get a dog, she will allow us to try. This is a true story. It's a true story that we could try for a boy.
Right.
So okay. So as the story going, without going too long into it, so she got the dog, and I ended up getting my boy Lamone the second. And even though we had the dog, me and the dog, when it's two males in there, you have to show who really is the alpha male. So I needed to show the dog, oh, this is my home. You're just living here. And so my wife leaves one weekend, and she goes to the sisters retreat. And I come home, and it's like in August. I still remember to this day. And we kept the dog in the garage, or we kept the dog outside. And this particular time, I left the dog in the crate inside. And I opened the door when I came home that Friday night, and the dog had been sick. So it was just a very stench coming from that garage, and the dog was all messed up. It needed to be cleaned up. And I didn't want to clean up the dog. And it was a Friday. And I'm like, my wife doesn't get home from the sisters retreat until Sunday. And I'm thinking, this dog gonna stay like this till Sunday. This is my dog. This is not my dog. This is her dog. She wanted this dog.
Right.
And so as I laid upstairs, God quickened me, you got to clean up that dog. And I was like, oh. So I drug myself downstairs, went in the garage, and I started cleaning out. Start cleaning the dog out, got him out the crate, cleaning him up. And now, before I can put him back in the crate, I got to clean the crate out. And the crate is only about 3 or 4 feet. I'm 6'11". I'm like, how am I going to get down in this crate? So I realized I got to get on my hands and knees and scrub and clean this crate with disinfectant and all that. And I'm looking at this dog while I'm cleaning it, and I'm almost just gagging just from the stench and smell. And while I'm down there on my knees in this crate, cleaning out this crate, the Spirit of God spoke to me. It says, "Why are you upset? So upset with this dog? This dog just got sick." He said, "You've the same condition I found you in when you needed my help. And the same that dog needs the same help."
Mm.
And it was like a light just came on. I was like, wow. So God was basically letting me know that you were in your mess and your sins and all your bad situations and all that. And I rescued you when you gave your life to
He
me.
cleaned you
And
up.
I reached way down to clean you up. And you need to show that same respect to this dog because this
Wow.
dog needs to be cleaned up, just like I cleaned you up. It was an eye-opening experience.
Dude.
God can teach you a lesson anywhere. He can teach you a lesson anywhere.
Yes.
Famous
Yes.
for doing that.
Yes.
So,
But that's what I appreciate about your book. I mean, you'll talk about instances, and then you'll give the application, maybe what the Lord had given you, for it. And I'm like, wow, okay, this is really something. How did he pull that out of that? But it's wonderful. It's just
so that was
absolutely
a
wonderful.
life-changing story that I still remember to this day.
Wonderful.
Wow.
Yep.
Incredible.
Gwen, do you want to share something that was probably key, or have you already shared it with us?
You mean
To
where
you?
the book is concerned? I mean,
Yeah, where the book is
everything.
concerned.
I mean,
Okay.
and Lamont talks about, before his dad, was saved and then what happened afterward. I mean, there still was time, with respect to, I guess redeeming that time, even though Lamont was 12 and the oldest one. I mean, there were still things that you were able to see, that I believe that you were able to garner and pull from it
Sure.
with respect to your dad finally being that dad, being the servant as opposed to the one that was selfish and doing his own thing. And I thought that was profound because it does have an effect on us one way or the other.
Yep.
And so God saw fit to right your dad, in other words, in time enough for your formative years for you to be able to see, okay, well, this is how a man truly takes care of his home and gives his children, especially his boys, the attention that they need. So.
Right. Good. Well, thank you for that.
What about you?
Oh, well,
Yeah,
I know you're the moderator here, but
I know, no, but that's
That's right.
No, that's good. I wanted to go around. I was trying to give way to you all first. One thing, I was sitting on the plane and I read this, and I'm going to just read this little excerpt. This was actually in your chapter talking about the impact of words and how important words are. And, you talked about the famous person Oprah Winfrey in here, and everybody, they throw out this, they make it as a joke now. You get a car, you get a car, you get this, you get that, right? 'Cause
Mhm.
she's famous for that now because of that show that she did giving away those cars. But here you talked about two things that were takeaways for you. But one thing you said about how she, actually conducted that show and how excited she was about giving away this gift. Of course, everybody else was excited because they were going to receive this, but you were drawn to the fact that she was so excited to give it away, this gift away. And here you say, as I scanned the room, I noticed that no one is more exuberant, jubilant, or excited than Oprah herself, the one giving away the cars. You said, how is this possible? If you take nothing more away from what you read today, and I think I grabbed from that, and you said, let it be this. Whatever we do in this life is always exponentially enhanced when we share it with others.
Mm.
And when I read that, I closed my eyes on the plane, and it's like I just took that statement in. It really did something for me, as a radio show host, as just a person in life. That's what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that really grabbed. That was that one statement you said. If there's anything else to be a takeaway, that was my takeaway from this.
That's beautiful.
It was perfect. It spoke volumes to me.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be something tangible or physical
No,
that
not
you
at all.
share or give. I mean, even just with this book, the thoughts and the themes that you're sharing, or when we impart just basic love.
Yes. Yes.
Just giving and forgiving,
Mhm.
and pushing, and that speaks volumes
It
as well.
does.
I mean, it's wonderful as well.
It made me look within. It really did.
And she said one thing, if I may.
Sure.
She talked about forgiveness, which I talk about in the book.
Yes.
And as a young man growing up, for whatever reason, it was hard for me to forgive. And as I got converted, I realized sometimes we carry things into our new life, or it follows us.
Yes.
It follows us.
Mm-hmm.
And God allows us to have to deal with it. And so one of the things I had a problem with before I got converted was forgiving people. I may act like your friend, but deep down I had that bitterness, I had that anger, and then that unforgiving heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got saved, God dealt with me concerning that. You're saved, but you're still dealing with unforgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to run into people who I had been holding. God permitted me to run into people that I didn't need to do it because I had a bad experience with them, or I thought they mistreated me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came, and I remember one specific incident. I remember there was a situation where there was a gentleman that used to play basketball. I'm not going to mention his name. It wouldn't be expedient. But anyway, we were rivals. He played at a high school, and eventually we didn't get along. And what happened is that he, after me and Angela at some point in time in high school, we had broken up. He dated Angela.
Mm-hmm.
So that really added fuel to the fire. That added more heat to the fire. Well, one day, years later, maybe 15, 20 years later, I was in church and he walked through the door.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. And I broke out into like a deep sweat. I did. I broke out into like a deep sweat. And I was like, President Obama could have walked in. I would have been more surprised. But this guy walked into the church and I'm like, So I all those feelings came back. Emotions came back.
Yes.
I didn't like him. I hated him and all that. So what happened was after service was over, and this is the power of God, I saw him from a distance, and my old man, the man that hated and was unforgiving, said, "Oh, just wave to him, like, hey, how you doing?" Like from 15 to 20 feet, just wave. But the Spirit of God said, "No, I want you to go over there." I was like, "Oh." It's like my feet were glued to the floor. Like, right. God, you want me to go over there? How come I can't just give him a little wave and be like, I'll see you later? But so I walked over there. And when I got over there, there was no animosity in my heart. And I shook his hand with a genuine handshake. And that let me know God had did something for me.
Yes.
Okay.
It was proven out at that point. And see, often the devil, he brings fear. And he brings all kind of emotions and feelings. But I was able to see that there was a change in my heart.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Beautiful. And then sometimes when we look back on that, and thank God for, bringing you to that point where you could actually forgive. But sometimes when we look back on stuff, it's so minute and little, the things that we've been holding against people.
But at that time,
it was big to you at that time. Exactly. Yes. And then, I think it also comes with growth and maturity.
Yes.
How we're able to, really just disseminate things and
let it go.
And let it go. Know what's important and what's not important. Exactly.
Sorry.
I love these girls. They so funny. But go ahead. I didn't want to cut you off. I want you to finish your thought.
I want you to finish your thought. Because it is truly all about forgiveness. And sometimes it takes others longer, to get to that point, than others. And then sometimes, we bring up little things. And by the way, I still have my band of brothers at DePaul. We're not just the basketball players, as someone so eloquently pointed out. But I also had, brothers like Daryl Robinson and Gary Stanley and Zamone Gray, who I actually happened to have married.
Shout out to Zamone. Right. Go ahead.
Who was actually responsible for looking out for me, even long after, everybody else was gone.
Pink Panther.
Right. He thought he was a Pink Panther in college. But we do have to learn to forgive. And sometimes because you hadn't, or the fact that you hadn't seen him in a while, like you were saying, when you did see him, it brought back those memories because that was an issue that was unresolved. And so, I believe that was the Lord sending him to your church after all these years. And you probably wonder, how did he get here?
Yes.
I mean,
Exactly,
how did he
exactly.
even know? And how,
Right,
in this
yes,
space
Exactly.
and time that I happen to be here this day. But God has a plan. He works out things. Sometimes we just can't figure them out. We just have to go with the flow.
Got to go with the flow. God has a sense of humor too.
He does. He does. I've learned that too.
He definitely does. Well, we are wrapping up. I can't believe we're at the end of another session on today. But I just want to thank you both for your time on today, for engaging in this conversation with me and analyzing this book, talking about this book, sharing it with me and my listeners. So thank you. I appreciate you.
I've thoroughly enjoyed being here. This has been, just like I said, like a reunion of
Yeah.
all sorts. It brought back the Paul days and different other days. So I'm thankful to be here. I appreciate you considering having me here. And if you ever want me to be back, I will.
Oh,
I'll
you
come
have
back.
an open mic. You have an open mic here with Mind, Body, and Soul. So you just let me know. We'll coordinate our calendars again and schedule that. Don't let me call you. You say I can't come. Don't get so big
Don't
for
get
me.
so lifted up. Okay,
you
all
forget
right.
about the little
Okay,
people.
no,
Okay.
That's right. That's right.
Because I honestly
been fun.
believe that the Lord is going to work through this project. He's going to take you places. I believe that.
Yeah.
He's already been preparing the way.
Mm-hmm.
I see that, and I see that it's going to be a blessing to so many, just like it was to us,
Amen.
and
I
those who
appreciate
have read
those
it.
words.
So we look forward to it, and when I see you on TV somewhere, just remember, you came here.
I know.
And she brought me on first. She brought me on first.
Right.
We remember
Annette
you
brought
win.
me on first.
And we knew you win.
Yes,
What,
definitely.
Annette, before we do get off the air, just really quick. Now, you did mention Mocha,
Mhm.
but I
Yes,
would like for you
I'm
to talk
sorry.
about that a little bit more in depth. Tell us what it stands for, what the mission and the goal of Mocha is, and give us any information that our listeners or her listeners. This is not my show. The
Not at
listeners.
all. I'm sorry.
The listeners can use, even to help to support the cause, because it's absolutely positively wonderful. And then maybe you can end it by letting them know once again where they can get the book.
Okay, very good. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. Obviously, MOCA has an acronym. MOCCHA stands for Men of Color Connected for Higher Achievement. It was a organization that was founded back in February of 2015, where initially it organically grew out of my studies at DePaul, and then obviously I did some volunteer work with Christian ministry out in Naperville, or Warrenville to be exact.
Mhm.
And so I was already volunteering. And so when this opportunity came along for me to start this foundation, it seemed like God was just aligning everything up, allowing me to meet the right people and to work with the right people. And so, it was a leap of faith to leave DePaul, because that was the second time around I went there as a student athlete.
Mhm.
And then I worked there for 12 years in the athletic development department under Gene Linty Ponsetto, who hired me there, and it was a great job. But I just felt at that time in my life, God was calling me to start the foundation, which basically centers around mentoring and teaching life skills to young men in the inner city from the ages of 10 to 18. And so we do a litany of things with them. We do financial literacy. We do
Beautiful.
we do collegiate trips. We take nature trips. We go to different cities throughout the United States just to give them a more well-rounded understanding of, just not being in your own familiar local surroundings. So it has been a blessing being able to work and share with the young man that we have involved with the program. And so we look to continually to try to grow and, grow the brand and grow the number of men that are participating. One of our main concerns right now is to do after-school programming in the Chicago Public Schools. So I've met with some people with that desire, and so hopefully that'll come to fruition. We do have a website. It's called mocha-shy.org. That's MOCCHA-shy.org. And so we've been around, like I said, a little more than 3 or 4 years. And so we're steadily growing, and we look to continue to make the impact in the lives of young men, not just here in the city, but hopefully it may be able to expand to other cities further on down the line. And you talked about the book, obviously we mentioned MOCA, which has been a part of my life over the last 3 or 4 years. And so If you want to get the book, like I said, you can go to Amazon under 7 Foot Faith, or you can go to the website 7footfaith.com, all one word, and you can purchase it there as well.
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
All right, we got to get out of here. My producer's waving me off. So I again appreciate you. Thank you all so much for joining me on today.
Love being
we're going to
here.
make sure we put the links in the live feed so you can get to it. So you've been listening to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette right here on Intellectual Radio.
You've just been listening to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette, where your host, Annette Harris, provided you with psychological and biblical insight for your everyday concerns. Need more insight? Visit Annette's Facebook page at Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. Don't forget, tune in next week for